So I am a third generation teacher.
Hmm.
My grandmother was, I believe this is correct. This is the family legend, is that she's one of the first women to have graduated from Stanford University's graduate program in teaching. And this is, gosh, this would be like 80 years ago or something, maybe 70. And my father was a teacher. He taught at Penn State University in the English department. And then on my mother's side, my grandfather was a math teacher and a farmer.
Hmm.
And my mother was a teacher also at Penn State. And then I earned 2 degrees from Penn State, actually in music, and went on to teach at Penn State Altoona and Penn State University Park. And then I thought, maybe what I actually want to do, maybe I want to be a social studies teacher. You know, let's develop the citizenry
Hmm.
of our country, because if you look at the like civic participation, I mean, like you just look at raw voting numbers in the United States compared to a nation like Australia, and you go, wow, people are really disaffected and disenfranchised. And part of that is because they don't know how to engage in the political process with a small p.
Hmm.
How do we work through difference? How do we talk? How do we vote? How do we access government? How do we get government to work for us without just raw economic power and dark money,
Yeah.
So how do we do that? I was really interested in fostering that. So I thought I'll become a social studies teacher. That was 14 years ago. And I started a program in education once again at Penn State. And then I met the woman who would become my advisor for my PhD. So I do have a PhD in educational theory and policy. But as I finished my PhD, I went on to work at a boys' boarding school. Taught 11th and 12th graders, and lived with 35 to 45, 18 to 18, 19-year-old boys, which is an experience I can tell you about. Um, all this is to say, then, that education is hugely important to me, and fostering good relationships with young people, doing your best to set a good example for them regarding the seriousness with which we take our role in civic life, developing our talents and realizing that people's talents are very different, and that working with them to foster them is hugely important. Um, I also work at Penn State Sustainability Institute. So every day that I go to work, I'm paying attention to both the local, the state level, the national, and global issues. Things like climate change, paying attention to, in some degree, to the impact of artificial intelligence on our daily lives. Thinking about clean air, clean water, urban development, rural health, huge issues that are all that is in Pennsylvania. They are so live.
Yeah.
And so in my district is around Penn State University.
Hmm.
And there's a sort of suburbia and then a kind of high tech industry here, and a very kind of urban, peri-urban, suburban economy. And then you leave that and it is, very traditional rural Pennsylvania, where we have farms, we have, gunsmithing shops, flower shops, traditional local like meat processing plants or feed mills. That's there's a dynamic, and this district is a lot like this state. And so balancing or saying, okay, how do we work through these differences, I think is really imperative for a representative like I will be, and for the state itself. And in my view, the legislature over the last, at least decade has done a bad job of working on rural infrastructure and rural health, and then some of the rural reps and the gerrymandered Republican majority snubbing its nose at Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, and Harrisburg, where you have intense urban issues, certainly racial inequality issues, and infrastructural issues. And just because of this sort of now just blanket hatred of, talking about any sort of tax reform that would increase funding for, these infrastructure investments, we're just perpetuating problems that is making Pennsylvania and Pennsylvanians lose. So, education, environment, and government service, I think, really come to the fore from what I've done, and will translate immediately into work in state government very well.